What I'm going to present to you, what I'm going to teach you is the essence of what I've learned over these years from different schools of philosophy and practices and teaching. Why are we learning pranayama? One thing that life cannot sustain without, even for a few minutes, is breathing, right? Did anyone ever teach us breathing? You learned a lot of other things. It's presumed that you know breathing. Instinctively you should, because it's a natural phenomenon. Instinctively you should. But even things that you know instinctively can always be improved through learning. But does any school, any family, any parent teach you how to breathe? The most important function of your life, you're never taught. You learn instinctively, you keep practicing it instinctively. You may be doing right, you may be doing wrong. You may be doing perfectly fine, you may not be doing. What we are going to learn today is breathing. And the only science available for teaching correct breathing is pranayama, which is a part of yoga system. No other science teaches you how to breathe. Some doctors here and there may guide you a little bit here and there, but there's no systematic way of teaching or learning breathing. It is the most essential function. Oxygen, all of you know, does a lot of things for you. It gives you energy. Without oxygen, your energy level will be, the lower the oxygen, the lower your energy level. The moment it drops below 90, you need to go to the hospital. And if you check with oximeter, you need to go to the hospital. What it also does is detoxifies. What happens? Blood, impure blood comes to the lung. Oxygen, what does it do? Purify. And the purified blood goes back into the system. So it has a very important function, which is purification, apart from giving you energy. And if your oxygen level is high, if your toxicity level is low, what it will do for your health is it will give you a strong immunity in your health. And the purpose of the discussion is from that angle, because as you all must be hearing, reading, talking about, that strong immunity is the main defense against COVID. Now, it's fairly established that you are here to live with COVID. How long ever or how long, we don't know. Only 3 protections that are important are strengthen your own health, follow protection norms, and maintain your distance from people. These are the only 3 things that will save you from COVID. You are here to deal with it for maybe life, who knows. So it's important from the point of view of immunity, and that's why we thought we will hold this presentation so that we can talk about. What we take in is air. Generally, it's believed that that's prana. Prana is a different entity than the air. You take in air from outside. Your body extracts something out of it, which is done by the lungs. That extracted entity or substance or whatever energy or whatever you call it is prana. So there are 2 entities here: air that comes in and prana that is extracted out. What comes in is called prana vayu, and what is extracted out that is prana. What is useful for the body is not the air. What is useful for the body is prana. So let's remember, prana is a different entity, a different energy than the air itself. The rest of it is thrown back out, and then again it's taken. Prana vayu recharges the prana, but what you use is prana. What does this prana do for us? What does this prana do for us? Prana is what is responsible for all your functions. The power of the body, the power of the mind, the power of your sensory function is prana. it's prana that fuels them. If prana is not there, you must have heard in Hindi a saying, "Iske pran nikal gaye." Iske pran ud gaye. What happens? All your functions stop. So prana provides the energy to all your body functions, all your mind functions, all your sensory functions. The higher or lower the level of prana, that much more efficient or that much stronger will your mental, physical, and sensory functions be. What is pranayama? Prana is, as I said, that life force, that vital energy, which your body uses all the time. The direct usage of that in the body is in your physiological autonomous functions. Your respiration, circulation, digestion, excretion, all the involuntary functions, autonomous functions that keep going on without you having to do anything are all directly fueled by prana. Even other functions are fueled by prana, but these are directly fueled by prana. The moment prana leaves, these are the first 5 functions that will stop first, and then the subsidiary functions will stop. But these are the functions that use prana also the most. So they are the biggest consumers of prana. Prana you spend every day, every minute, including respiration. Now, what is pranayama? So bear this in mind that they are the biggest consumer of prana too. Now, what is pranayama? Prana is that energy, but what is pranayama? It's prana and ayam. Ayam has 2 meanings. Ayam, first meaning is control, regulation, let's say, using it, etc. The second meaning of ayam in Sanskrit is expansion, extension. The meaning that is more relevant here is expanding your prana, extending the function of your prana. General belief is prana is taken in the lung, oxygen is taken in the lung, rest of the air is thrown out, and it functions in the lung. Not so. Prana circulates through your body through various channels. If it remains only in the lung, then your digestion function and your circulation function and your let's say excretion function will not work. So prana is circulated in your body through these channels. What does pranayama do? Is all these functions are enhanced. So prana is enhanced both in terms of capacity as well as in terms of circulation, in terms of extending into your body. When you learn advanced pranayama, you can even direct your pranayama to certain specific parts of your body. You can even feel it. You can feel it going there. You can feel the effect of that. So in pranayama, what you're doing is you're increasing your pranic energy and you are increasing the extension of that pranic energy into your body, into your different functions. So it's a concept which is unique to this time. Prana in yoga is considered Agni. Agni is fire. So it needs to be handled carefully because it can do both. It can fuel, it can help, it can also destroy. It can also create problems. That's why pranayama needs to be ideally learned under supervision of a teacher, of an acharya. That's why I decided to hold a physical session, not instead just a Zoom, that at least those who can come can possibly learn directly instead of only Zoom. Those who can't be here, of course, can see it on Zoom. Pranayama, as I said, pranayama can take prana to different parts. Yoga science talks about a latent source of energy, a very large source of energy, lying dormant at the base of your body. Pranayama can take prana to that force, stream And that force is called Kundalini. Why Kundalini? Because Kundalini means it's coiling. So that force remains at the base of your body, coiled form. That's why it's called Kundalini. If prana activates it, it starts rising. It can you can be a super yogi. You can be great. You can do a lot of things. You do not know how to handle it. It's an extremely powerful energy, which can even make you mad. So prana does activate that, and that's why it's important to learn advanced pranayama, particularly. Basics are okay, but advanced pranayama and that I am not going to teach you advanced pranayama. This is not unless you've gone through practices for a long time, you can't go to that stage. Next one, please. So as I said, pranayama is a part of a yogic system. Now yoga deals, what yoga deals with three aspects. Yoga first deals with your conduct, your behavior, which most of the people don't associate yoga with. Yoga has 8 parts, called Ashtanga Yoga, with the 8 parts to yoga, 8 angas to yoga. The first 2 parts are basically don'ts and do's of your life. What you should do, what you should not do. And they pertain to your conduct and behavior. Generally, those are not even referred to in yoga. Those are what is called yama and niyama. Those are what you are supposed to not do or do in your life. They're a very important part in the in yoga system. Then it deals with the body, which is asana. And most of you are familiar with asana. Generally, yoga starts from asana and not from yama niyama. Then it deals with prana, which happens through breathing. So that's called pranayama. So pranayama is the 4th part of yoga. There are 4 more parts to yoga, which all deal with the mind. And they are pratyahara, dharana, dhyana, and samadhi. They all deal with your mind. So if you see pranayama is positioned between the body and the mind. Because breathing, prana, is the bridge. Otherwise, body and mind can command and body obeys. Body control over mind, not possible. But the bridge between the mind and the body is prana. So prana finally can help you control your mind. The purpose of yoga is what? Purpose of yoga, we will come to this. So through breathing, you can control your sensory functions and your mind. So pranayama is a tool that will equip you, that will make you powerful enough to handle your mind. Then there are techniques of handling your mind, and those are the 4 techniques dealing with the mind, which generally is called meditation. But meditation itself has 4 parts, which is pratyahara, dharana, dhyana, and samadhi. In 1 minute each, if I were to tell you, pratyahara is excluding all external inputs into your mind. So basically, closing off your sensory gates. There are noise, but you don't take it in. There's form and color in front of you, but you don't take it in. That is easy by closing your eyes, but ears don't close. But still shutting off your ears so that noise doesn't affect your mind in any way. So that's pratyahara, cutting off external inputs. So that's the first requirement for starting to control your mind. If inputs keep coming, mind will keep reacting to the inputs. The second stage is dharana, where you take a thought, concept, name, image, form, whatever, and concentrate on it. But that concentration doesn't happen immediately. So in the first stage, mind focuses on it, then again it goes to just here and there, all over. You bring it back. Again it goes. Again you bring it back. So you get intermittent concentration. That's called dharana. Practice, able to maintain your focus continuously on whatever your object is. That continuous concentration is dhyana. So there are stages of meditation. First you switch off, then you start focusing, and then you are able to focus for a long enough period. That's dhyana. Samadhi, what yoga says is that if you are able to focus on something to complete exclusion of everything else, all of the thoughts, all of the inputs, etc., for a long enough period, then, so to say, you become one with that. It could be an object, it could be an entity, it could be a person. You all must have read here, had at some stage about Ramakrishna. So I'm the Ramakrishna Paramhans. And you must have read Ramakrishna Paramhans and his goddess Kali could talk to each other on a daily basis. That's that stage. That you become one with that entity. His object of concentration was Kali. And his concentration was so intense that you could become one with Kali. So you could talk to Kali, you could feel Kali, you could see Kali. That's the stage of Samadhi. So that's just a brief. We are not discussing those points today. Just to give you a brief idea of what those four parts are. Object of yoga. Next slide. Okay, here. Objective of yoga is what? Objective of yoga is not teaching us pranayama and asanas for body and for mind. Objective of yoga, it says yoga. Yoga means merger, unification. As you all know, Hindu philosophy talks about a supreme self and an individual self. Yoga is merging these two selves. That is, you become one with your larger self, the supreme self. For that, you need mind to be, as per yoga, mind needs to be eliminated. As I talked about, you need to become one with that. Samadhi takes you there. So you need to control your mind to a level where you can become one with that object. And pranayama is one step required for that. So that is the ultimate objective of pranayama, of yoga. But we are not right now looking at it from that angle. We are looking at it from the angle of how we can benefit out of it in our day play, which is a byproduct, which is a side effect of pranayama. That is not the main effect of pranayama. But what we are concerned with is side effect, which is giving you immunity, giving you health, giving you energy and stress relief and all that. Okay, next please. Briefly, the origin of yoga is credited to, say, Patanjali. And there are only 4 verses in his Patanjali's Yoga Samhita, which what do they say? First is after mastering. So I'm talking only pranayama. So after mastering posture, which is asana, one must practice control of prana by controlling the motion of inhalation and exhalation. The breath may be stopped externally or internally or in mid-motion and regulated according to place in the body. Where do you want to stop it? I told you, you can take it to different parts of the body. Time, how long do you want to stop it? And number, how many times? So that the stoppage is either long or brief. That is the 4th kind of pranayama is the one that I talked about. That is, you become so concentrated that, so that's what you're talking about. The 4th kind of pranayama is the stoppage of breath by concentration. So when you concentrate, you must have, see, pranayama affects, your breathing affects mind and mind affects breath. When you are stressed out, you are angry, you are anxious, you are fearful. Have you ever noticed your breathing? It'll be shallow. It'll be fast and shallow. When you're happy, you're comfortable, you are relaxed, your breathing will be deeper. It's an automatic function that happens. Mind works on prana, breathing works on mind. At some stage, or maybe every day, you always reach a stage where you're concentrating and you reach that level of concentration. Generally, it happens with the scientist, that he is so engrossed in work. When you're concentrating, or a very simple example that you can do on an everyday basis, if you want to thread a needle, you focus, right? You need to focus, otherwise you're not going to thread a needle. When you're focusing intently, have you ever noticed what happens to your breathing? It stops. For that intense concentration, you need to stop your breathing. So the samadhi that I talked about requires breathing to stop. And you must have heard samadhi can last for days together. So it takes you to that level that you can still function without breathing. And that's the fourth one you're talking about. That with extreme concentration, you can stop your breathing. So concentration will stop your breathing. And without stopping your breathing, you cannot concentrate to that level. So what does it do? How do you then still function after that? So what pranayama is doing, apart from giving you energy, etc., we eat food, but we can still last a few days without eating more. How is that? Because your body retains a certain store, a certain reserve. But that doesn't happen with breathing. There's no reserve. Pranayama does that. Builds a reserve of pranayama, prana in your body. So that even if you don't replenish it for a finite period, your body can still, your functions can still continue. They will continue at a very low level, but they will continue. You will not die. That's what pranayama does. This is all advanced stages and there are different things. So I'm just giving you the conceptual meaning of that. And as a result, the inner light is removed. Inner light, cover on the inner light is removed. So you become one with it. Okay. So this was about prana, pranayam, and the yoga. Now let's come to our practice, our pranayam, what we want to learn today. First thing, in terms of what are the prerequisites, not to be practiced after a meal, at least for 2 hours. Your stomach, your intestine should be empty. Your bowels may not be, but your intestine and your stomach needs to be empty. Ideal time is before breakfast in the morning or before dinner in the evening, not after a meal. If you do the entire system of yoga, then do it after asana, before meditation. That's the right time. Whereas that's the bridge. So after you finish your asana, then do your pranayama and then do your meditation. Regular practice, of course, will go on a long way. Once in a while you do it, doesn't help you as much. If you do it regularly, try and make a regimen that you do it at the same time, same place, etc. If that's ideal. If you can't do it, then at least do it every day. Do it in a ventilated place, not in an air-conditioned space. Right now, we are in an air-conditioned space. But mind you, what are you trying to do? Take in more and more of fresh air and extract prana out of it. So ideally, it should be in open space, not in a closed air-conditioned place. Second is, do not do it if there's wind in the open place. So find an open place which is stable. Air is there, fresh but stable. That's why cave. No wind. Fresh air but stable, not the old version of the ancient version of room. Then a comfortable, stable seat. Now, I'll show you. Ideally, done by sitting on the floor with a comfortable seating. There are different asanas that you can sit in. But now, some asanas can be only those who are practicing it. Those who don't practice, you can sit in the comfortable cross-legged pose, what we call halti palti or whatever. Yoga calls it sukhasana. We can always sit the way you always sit. But what is important is erect and relaxed posture. I am not showing you what the asanas are because I thought since none of you are sitting on it, but I'll show you the picture for those asanas. Padmasana, all of you are familiar with. Some of you may be able to do it, many of you will not be able to do it. It also depends on age, depends on practice, etc. So you can do Padmasana, or you can do half Padmasana, or you can do Siddhasana. Siddhasana and Padmasana differences. Padmasana, your foot is on your thigh in Siddhasana, it is not on thigh, it is next to your thigh. It's slightly tucked in and slightly pulled out, both sides. But it's not completely on the thigh. So if you see it's not on the thigh, it's inserted between the thigh and the calf. That's Siddhasana. Or you can do what is called Vajrasana, which is you fold your legs inside, sit on your ankles with the inner ankles. So external ankles are below and inner ankles are up, and your toes are next to each other. If you need to put toe on each other, then make sure that right toe is on top. So either toes are next to each other or right toe is on top. This is a posture. This is a asana that gives you very comfortable posture. But if you for this you need practice. If you don't, then you can do any of those. As I said, or you can always sit in Sukhasana, cross-legged. Those who are not regular at it may find it difficult to keep the posture erect. You can take support of a pillow. If you insert a pillow under your buttocks, half, full, depends on each person. But if you insert a cushion under yourself, it makes you more erect, because it gives you a little elevation and your spine becomes more erect. So feel free to do that. Put a bit of a cushion under yourself. Do not take support of the wall. You need to sit away from the wall. You need to sit by yourself. And insert a cushion underneath if you need to. If you are comfortable without that, then sit in any of these postures that you'll see. We are all now sitting on chair. Many of you may not be able to do any of these, or you may not be able to sit erect on the floor for too long. You can sit on a chair and do it. How to do it on a chair? If I was to demonstrate, you do not take support of the back. So you move in front, right? And what you do is pull your chest up. Even when you're sitting down, not what we were taught in NCC and our whatever training we had, Sina Bahar Pet Andar. We're not doing that, chest out, stomach in. Yes, chest is pulled up. And you notice when you imagine there's a hook here and you are hanging by that hook. So what happens to your chest? Imagine when you do that, what happens to your spine? It automatically falls into the natural shape. So if you pull your chest up like this, move away from there, keep your feet stable, and hands are going to possibly use for different things. But this posture will be easy for you to maintain on a chair, because you're used to sitting on a chair. That's why I'm demonstrating to you on a chair, right? What is important is your spine, your neck, and your head remaining in one line. That is important throughout the practice of pranayama. Your spine, your neck, and your head should remain straight in a straight line. As you can see, that straight line there. Okay? This is what it is. Okay. Apart from this seating, next one, please. How many of you know that both your nostrils don't work at the same time? You all know? Generally everyone notices. While doing pranayama, it's important that both your nostrils are open. When does it open? When you exercise, what happens? Does one work or both work? That's natural. If you exerted, then both nostrils start working. So best is, let's say, if you're doing it after asana, both your nostrils will be open because you've just done the asana. If you're not, if you're doing like we are doing right now, there are two ways. Either you can do a bit of walking around, or you can do your squat jogging or squat walking, squat stepping. Or if you don't have that possibility, then insert your palms in your arms. Sit like this for 10-15 minutes, both your nostrils will open. It's a magic trick I'm teaching you. Just insert your palms in your armpit. Sit like this for 10-15 minutes, and your nostrils will open. But it's important to have both nostrils open because you're going to do breathing. So when you're sitting erect and you're doing breathing, what is involved in the breath? Nothing except for your respiratory tract and maybe your hands. Everything else in the body must be completely relaxed, particularly face. You will notice when you're doing breathing, as you go into it, your face will tend to distort a little bit. Some people get like this, some people, because you get a little tense, you get a little conscious of it. Make sure to relax your face. Face should be completely relaxed. Rest of the body also should be relaxed. So the only thing that you possibly need to constantly keep attention to is your chest. If you keep it up, everything automatically falls in place. So that's one thing that you need to do. Apart from that, everything else in the body should be relaxed. Clothing, ideal clothing is a gown. As I told you, prana needs to move into your body. So the lesser the constriction, the better. So no wristwatches, no bangles, no rings, no spectacles when you're doing your pranayama. Ideally, not even your, let's say your undergarments, because they tend to constrict your midriff. Ideally, just a gown, nothing else, which just hangs, right? Or like a long shirt, so it just hangs. So it doesn't obstruct any movement anywhere, ideally, but it depends on all situations. Now, when you're going to close your eyes when you do your pranayama, but before you close your eyes, you need to fix your gaze in the center of your eyebrows. How do you do that? Very simple. Project your thumb out like this, raise it slightly, and look at the thumb and close your eyes. And maintain the gaze there. It basically goes slightly up. With practice, you'll be able to focus here. But it's important that your gaze is slightly raised, elevated, not straight or down. Conceptually, the brain has 3 levels. The subconscious is at the lower level. The conscious level, which you deal with the world, is straight. So when you're dealing with the world, you're looking straight. Whenever you are tapping into subconscious, you will always tend to look down. You are now trying to tap into superconscious, which is up, which is here. And that's why the gaze has to be slightly up so that you are focusing on that in that direction. With practice, you'll be able to focus here. When you're doing breathing, it's going to be nasal breathing, not mouth. And the breathing is going to be slow, steady, and sustained. It's not going to be there's going to be no noise. Even if slight noise is there in particular pranayama, there will be some noise, but it is slow, steady, sustained. Everyone has his own length because you will have different lung capacities, you will have different way of different physiology. But it is going to be slow, steady, and sustained. It is not going to be fast, rhythmic. It's not going to be fast. It's not going to be with jerks. It has to be rhythmic. It has to be like music. It will be nasal breathing unless prescribed otherwise. There will be some pranayams where the breathing is not nasal, or part of the breathing is not nasal. Now, when you're breathing in, if you pay attention, you would realize yourself, but let me point this out to you. When you breathe in, which part of the lung does the breath go to first? It will go to the bottom, like a balloon. When you blow into a balloon, where does the air go first? At the deeper end. And then slowly it keeps building. Same way, or there's a vessel and you put water in it, where does the water go first? Bottom. So when you're breathing in, pay attention that your breath is going to the bottom first and then slowly filling up. When that happens, when it goes to the bottom, what will happen is diaphragm will go down, the stomach will come out. As it builds up, over a period, when you're coming to the end, you'll possibly see your shoulders and your shoulder blades rising a little bit. If you take a full breath, so you're taking a full breath here. When you take a full breath, you will see a bit of stomach going out, and at the end, your shoulders and your shoulder blades going up. And then your stomach, lung is filled up properly. Do not overfill it, because then you will not be able to, not be comfortable. So you will have to figure out your own capacity as to how much can the lung hold, and fill it fully. And the indication is that your shoulder and your shoulder blade automatically will rise a little bit. And stop it. Many people will tell you, you breathe with your stomach. It is not stomach breathing. Stomach goes in and out as an effect. When you fill in, diaphragm goes down, stomach goes out. When you exhale, diaphragm goes up, stomach goes in. So stomach going in and coming in is an effect, not you don't breathe with your stomach. So don't start breathing with your stomach. When you exhale, same thing will happen. Air from the top will go out first. So your shoulder will start going down, blade will go down. Then breath will go down from the middle portion and then the bottom. At the end, the stomach will collapse. Now, you can do it irrespective of whether your tummy is concave or convex. Internally, it's the same. Whether you're fat or you're slim doesn't matter. Internally, you are the same. So stomach will come out or go in less or more, depending on how you are structured. Initially, later on, you'll be able to feel it at a higher level. But initially, when you're breathing in, feel your breath at the nostril. Inside the nostril, you will be able to feel when you're breathing. So please focus on your nostrils to feel the breath coming in and going out. With practice, you'll be able to raise that awareness from here to middle of your nostril, and ultimately you'll be able to take your awareness to the point that I told you earlier. The target is to take your attention here and feel the breath hitting here. It will hit. It does hit. So your target has to be feeling the breath here with practice. But initially, feel it at the nostril. Now you are learning and you will do it for, let's say, if you do it every day, you will do it for half an hour, 45 minutes, etc. Is the purpose to do it at that time only? The purpose is extending this into your day in your routine breathing. This is going to be deep, slow, steady breathing. The objective is to import that into your 24-hour breathing cycle. Years back, I heard a lecture by Neil Armstrong. Neil Armstrong is American. We all know who he was. And from the audience, somebody asked him a question that for you to be selected to go to the moon, you must have been physically very fit. So that's one of the criteria. What exercises did you do to gain fitness? And I was surprised with his answer. He said, I did not do any exercise at all. There was immediately a question as to why. Because you need to build fitness. He says, I have learned, he did not mention where, he said, I have learned that you come to the world with specific number of breaths to your credit. You can do that. You can spend them fast, you can spend them slow. So the only thing I practiced was breathing. I suppose this would be a prime effect on him. He must have read somewhere, learned somewhere. But the only exercise that he did was slow breathing. So he says, I was not surprised to hear this from an American. This is what you got to see. You can notice it in nature. Creatures like turtles, elephants, they're very slow breathers. Turtles take a breath one in a few hours. And creatures that breathe fast, they have a short span of life. You can see a dog, a short span of life. Turtles can live for hundreds of years. Elephants can live up to 70, 80, 100 years. Slow breathers always have a longer lifespan. Fast breathers always have a shorter span of life. So it's up to you whether you want to do shallow, deep, fast breathing, or you want to import this into your everyday breathing 24 hours a day. That's what you should try and do. You will keep getting occupied with different things that you're doing. Whenever you realize that your breathing is going fast, make it. And you will also notice whenever you're anxious, stressed, etc., do some deep breath, your stress goes down, your anxiety goes down. It's normal. So it will keep your mind in a better shape. So import it to your normal life. Okay, next please. Okay, now we'll come to the pranayama as such. When you breathe in, there are 4 parts to it. You normally practice only 2. Inhale, exhale. But in pranayama, there are 4 parts. Inhalation, retention, exhalation, retention. So Inhalation is called Purak, that you're filling it. Abhyantar Kumbhak. Kumbhak is vessel. So you are locking it in the vessel. Rechak and Bhaya Kumbhak. That's the Sanskrit names for it. So just in case you read anywhere, you can correlate what it means. So there are 4 parts to the inhalation, to the breathing, which we will talk about in detail as we go along. There are 2 types of breath. What is this? There's only one type of breath, right? When you breathe in, there's only one type of breath. You've seen a dog, tongue out and breathing with a bit of noise. Where does the noise come from? We will use that breath in the practice. So what happens is your epiglottis is slightly constricted. When it's constricted, what happens is, otherwise, if you constrict it, if you do not constrict it, so that's something that you need to learn and practice. That breath is called Ujjayi breath. We will talk about it in the work. That Ujjayi breath is with that bit of constriction of glottis, which makes a little very soft noise. It makes a bit of noise. But that is only in some pranayam, not on all pranayams. When you're breathing in, breathing out, it's going to be slow, steady, and deep. But when you're breathing out, whether you're breathing out too forcefully or slow enough, the test is a 14-finger test. Now, traditionally, 14-finger means from your nostril, if you take 14 fingers, which approximately is 12 inches, the breath will go up to 12 inches and not beyond. That is a test of whether you're breathing out forcefully. If you breathe out forcefully, it goes much beyond. But the test is that your breath should not go beyond 14 ungal, as they call it, anguli, for 12 inches approximately. So the test is you place a feather or a small piece of cotton 12 inches away from your nostril and see whether it reacts. If it reacts, it's going beyond, otherwise it doesn't. Which is traditional test. But idea that I'm conveying is it has to be a slow and steady breath, so it doesn't go too far. Okay, next please. And there are 3 levels to the pranayama. One is what is deep breathing, which is called yogic breathing. Second is breathing with retention that we talked about. And third is breathing with retention and with bandhas. So bandhas, what bandhas are, we'll talk about later. There are certain locks that you apply. Long retention and bandhas only under supervision. Simple bandhas you will be able to apply, which I will show you what you can do, but bandhas for a long time you will not do on your own, because as I said, it's something very powerful that you're handling. Next please. Okay, now let's talk about yogic breathing. When you inhale, maintain a count. Try and maintain it in the same pace as a second. So counting seconds. Every one of you will have a different count. Some of you may have 5, and some of you may have 8, and some of you may have 12. Doesn't matter. It is no competition. You don't have to ask the other person how many did you and how many did I. Is my long strong or not strong? Everyone is made differently. So your own count is what you will keep track of. So make a mental note of how many seconds it does take you for inhalation. In yogic breathing, in deep breathing, what you're only doing is slow, steady breathing, deep, filling in your lower part, middle part, up part, raising your shoulder rising a little bit, count the seconds. And similarly, when you exhale, you will notice your exhalation normally is slightly longer than inhalation. What we are going to do is, with practice, increase the gap between exhalation and inhalation. You have an inhalation count. Over a period, your inhalation count also will go up. As you practice, as your capacity builds up, your inhalation count also will go up. Ultimately, our target is to reach a ratio of 1 to 2. 1 to 2. So if inhalation, let's say, is 5 counts, exhalation takes 10 counts. Inhalation 12 counts, exhalation takes 24 counts. You start with your number, whatever is. Objective for you at your level is to reach a count of 12 to 12 seconds of in, 3-4 seconds out. So 1 or let's say 5 rounds of deep breathing, 1 over 1, right? We will sit in at the edge of the chair in front, not exactly edge, but sit away from the back of the chair, as I said. Okay. Plant your feet firmly on the ground, chest up, spine straight. Neck slightly tilted up because you want to fix your gaze higher, right? Take your gaze up. If you can take it here, fine. Otherwise, mentally also you can take it up. Take it up, close your eyes. Your palms can remain whichever way you want right now. Okay, they can be placed on the thighs. They can be facing upward, facing down. You can place it on your lap, whatever. But don't focus on that. Now, having set yourself up, take a deep breath first at your normal pace, and exhale. Now, in the second round, start doing slow, deep, steady inhalation and count seconds. And then count the exhalation seconds so that you know what is happening. Okay, let's start. Do 5 rounds and open your eyes. Five rounds only. Okay, as I said, all of you will have different capacities. Some finished fairly early, some finished quite late. It's not a competition, is it? You have your own capacity. You do that. Some faces were up, some faces were down, some faces were straight. There's a slightly tilted up, slightly, and gaze upwards. Some necks were tense, and some faces had some distortion. So pay attention. So face should be clean, neck should be relaxed. Everything is relaxed except your focus on the chest and nostrils. You're feeling the breath on the nostrils in the nostrils. And you focus on the chest is only to maintain it, keep it straight. That's all. Otherwise, you're not focusing on the chest. If you feel that gone down, again pull it up so that your back remains straight. I would not know if there was any breaks or any jerks in your breathing, but there should not be. If there is any, with practice you need to eliminate that. So it's a straight, smooth line going up like music. It goes up and down, very straight and smooth. There is no jerk. There is no variation in speed. Now you did mental note of your own counts, and Some of you might not have noticed the difference. Some of you might have noticed the difference too. With practice, as I said, exhalation longer, inhalation than inhalation. Reach a count of 1:2. First, at your level, if your inhalation is 5, make your exhalation 10. Then you can slowly start raising your inhalation, and automatically the exhalation also gets stronger. This is yogic breathing. This is what I want you to practice 24 hours a day. It's not going to happen tomorrow. It'll take you years to do that. But once you're able to do that, you will see the effect. Once you progress in it, you will see difference that is coming up, particularly your mental state, energy level, and your mental state. Whether at the end of the day you are tired or not, you will start noticing it. You're getting lesser tired at the end of the day. You are less stressed out. You have a cooler head. You are able to deal with situations very easily. This is something that I want you to all practice as much as you can. Sitting down, standing. Standing also you can like you're doing nothing, standing and watching something. Put yourself in that mode. Just start breathing slowly. You can watch a movie. You can see a show. You can be talking to somebody. You do that. But pay attention that your breathing is slow, steady, and deep. It will require an awareness. So you need to be aware that what is happening to your breath. Pay attention to your breath constantly. And over a period, you become aware of it automatically. But constantly you are aware of it. That how is my breathing right now? And then you can regulate it. So this is something very basic, and this is the first step to pranayama, which I want you to all practice 24 hours a day. Okay. Next one, please. Now the second stage, we're first doing the stages, the levels, and then we'll come back to actual techniques. Is with retention. So the same, you breathe in, take a count, hold. As I said, take in only so much breath that you can actually comfortably hold. You over inhale, you will not be able to hold because the pressure is in the lung to exhale. So you find your own level, as I said. Breathe in enough. At the same time, don't overbreathe. Hold. Once you realize that you're not able to hold, don't hold it to a level of panic. The moment you start feeling even little discomfort, exhale. Same way, steady, slow. After you exhale, again hold. As much as you can comfortably. Then again inhale. Do not reach a point that because you're holding the inhalation without, you need to suck in. Do not reach that point. You need to find your own level, your own point. If it happens with a few times you practice, you'll find that. Everyone again will have different ratios. Time to breathe, retention, and all along you are counting seconds at the same pace. The pace of counting should not change. Otherwise, the ratio will not be right. You can't be looking at watch because your eyes are closed. You're focusing on something else. You're not focusing on the watch. So you have to develop your own mental count of the same pace. What the target is going to be is 1 to 2 to 2 to 2. And over a period, raise it to 1 to 4 to 2 to 2. Which means if 1 second to breathe in, 2 seconds hold, 2 seconds to breathe out, 2 seconds hold. Not going to happen the first time. I'll tell you what will happen first time. You breathe in 8 counts, you'll be able to hold only 4 counts. Because you're not used to it. Not that you cannot, your mind can, but mentally you're not used to that person. So your mind will start acting on you. And you will breathe out after 4. But 1 to 2 to 2 to 2, you'll be able to do it comfortably with some amount of mental training and practice. At your level with practice over a period, I want you to go to 1 to 4 to 2 to 2. Advanced yogis can go to 1 to 16 to 8 to 8. So if you breathe in for, let's say, 12 counts, then you can hold it 16 times 12. That's advanced yoga. You are not even keeping that in mind. I'm just keeping it in mind. These are people who go into then various, they can do a lot of things. They can do. But your target ultimately is 1 to 4 is to 2 is to 2. So how to do it? How to reach there? Let's say first start with a low count. Even if you're let's say you counted just now, let's say your inhalation is 8. inhale 4. So make it a little faster, but steady, so that you can hold it, right? And then 8 exhalation and 8 holding. So when you do the first round, note the time you're able to hold. Make your inhalation half of that. Then you'll be able to achieve this ratio. It doesn't have to be in the beginning 12:2 whatever. You can start with 4 seconds, you can start with 5 seconds of breathing in and then holding accordingly. Again, up to you. So everyone has different capacity. So we'll practice this. Breathing in slow and steady, holding. First, you're not trying to reach a ratio. First, you're only making a note, mental note of yourself. Exhalation, holding. Okay. Same. Away from the backrest. Feet firm. Chest up. Back straight. Palms on the thighs. Neck slightly up. Gaze higher. Close the eyes. And we start. There are only 2 rounds first. With these 2 rounds, you made a note. How many seconds are you able to hold? And based on that, as I said, adjust your inhalation and your exhalation accordingly. So now we do just breathing with the ratio. As I said, figure out your own ratio. But now we do it with the ratio. Okay. Same. So the same steps remain the same. Firmly on the ground, feet firmly on the ground, back straight, chest up, gaze slightly up, eyes closed. Again, you do 2 rounds. So were you able to maintain a ratio? With practice, you will get it. After retention, while exhaling, sometimes you may find a bit of jerky moment in the beginning. With practice, that will go. With practice, it will go. So initially, if it happens, okay, don't worry about it. With practice, it will become very smooth. But this is the first. I'm just teaching you the deep breathing with these two stages. You will not go beyond that ratio, except under supervision. So I'll share the PPT with all of you. So the numbers are there. Right now you can make a mental note, and later on you can look at the PPT. Next one. The next level, as I said, is bandhas. Right? There are three bandhas. There are three locks that you apply while doing pranayama. One bandha is, the first bandha is what's called Moola bandha. Now, Mool, you know, is root. So, and you're doing pranayama sitting. So when you're sitting, what is your root? The bottom, the area between your anus and your reproductive organ, the floor of your pelvis, that is touching the chair or the floor. That is the bottom. That is where Kundalini sits. And that is Mool. It is not the anus. Some places when you read, or some people will tell you anus. It is not anus. It is the floor, Mool. It is the root, the floor of your body. Floor means not the feet, because you're doing it sitting, the floor of your torso. What touches the chair or the floor when you sit. That is, now how do you apply a bandha? What you do is pull that up by contracting your muscles. You pull that up. Pulling the anus in is easy. You're not pulling the anus in. You want to pull that, the muscles of that area by contracting. Pull them up. You can try it out. Just try out sitting only. Just try out the action of pulling up the muscles. So that's what is called Moola bandha. That you pull it in. The second bandha is lowering your chin till it touches the chest. So if you notice, what are you doing? You're sealing it in. From below you apply the lock, from top you apply the lock. So you lower your chin till it touches the chest. So you are locking your respiratory system. And the third bandha is, this is called Jalandhar bandha. The third one is called Uddiyana bandha. In that, what you do is you collapse your stomach, you pull your stomach in and up. So when you pull in and up, diaphragm goes up. To apply the bandha, you have to use your stomach, because you will not be able to push the diaphragm without using the stomach. So you pull the stomach in and push it up slightly. Try. It will actually collapse. Stomach, you're pulling it in and then pushing slightly up. So you're first pulling in and then pushing up. So when you push up, just to expand a little bit, diaphragm will go up. That's the third bandha. Now, bandha means you apply these locks and retain and maintain. Right now, you're only doing and leaving, doing and leaving. In bandha, you want to apply these and keep them in that position for some time. Everyone has his own capacity. The same deep breathing with retention, then you add to that the bandha. So what you do is inhale, retain, apply 3 bandhas, 1 by 1. Release the bandhas, then exhale and retain out. While you retain out, you do not apply the bandhas. You apply the bandhas when the breath is in. So you are feeling the breath in from all sides, so that the lungs can work on it. It's not escaping anywhere else. Moola bandha, that is pulling the floor, is what you start with, even before inhalation. So you first apply a Moola bandha, then do inhalation while you're still holding your Moola. then you retain, and then you apply Jalandhar, that is neck, and then you pull the stomach in. You release exactly reverse. First, Uddiyana, that is stomach, then straightening your neck, that is Jalandhar, and then letting go of Mula. And then you exhale. So this will require practice. Basic level, I want you to do this if you are seriously following it after this. At a basic level, whatever level will teach you. But advanced level, you will not. For long periods, you will not do it unless under supervision, unless you are with a teacher. A teacher is constantly. You're going to a class and or you're doing a one-to-one practice. So let's try this. You may have some difficulties in this, but let's try it first. Because you have to figure out your speed of applying the bandhas. If you're too slow, you may find that you are running out of retention time. If you're too fast, then you'll not achieve the effect. So you have to figure out your own timing. How fast are you applying your bandhas? What will happen is the Mool bandha, when you apply, you will forget. So let it go. Again, pull it up. The moment you realize that it's gone, pull it up again. So in the beginning, what will happen is you'll be pulling up your floor multiple times. But you need to retain it till the end. With practice, it will remain retained. But initially, you will notice that you pulled it up, but automatically it's gone. So again, you pull it up. You be attentive that it is remaining pulled up. So you'll possibly land up doing it a couple of times. So same. I don't need to repeat now, right? The posture. The posture, we inhale, we first apply Mula bandha, then start inhaling, retain, apply the neck lock first, and then the stomach lock. Reverse, you let go the stomach, let go the neck, let go the bottom, then exhale and retain. We all do one round each first. Okay? Okay. Let's get into the posture. Close the eyes, start. Only one round. How many of you got the sequence right? And how many were able to manage it? Right? So your retention time was enough to be able to apply and unlock and then leave. This will require a little more practice. The maximum benefit of pranayama is at this stage. That's where you benefit the maximum. Doesn't matter the count. If you're not able to go to 12 and 24 and all that, doesn't matter. Even for with lower count, this is what you want to use the maximum benefit. Sorry? Can I repeat the sequence again? First Mool bandha, then inhalation, retention, Jalandhar bandha, that is neck lock, Uddiyana bandha, that is stomach lock, hold as long as you can, then release the stomach lock, Uddiyana bandha, then release the neck lock, the Jalandhar bandha, then release the Mula bandha, the floor lock, and then exhale, then retain. While you're retaining externally, no lock. The sequence and durations, etc., are the ratios are as we saw earlier. So those ratios apply. That sequence applies. That technique applies. This is an addition to that. Right? Sequence is here. So I'm going to share this PPT. Sequence is stated here. So this is the important. Moola bandha, inhalation, retention, neck lock, stomach lock, hold, releasing stomach lock, neck lock, releasing bottom lock, and then exhalation, and then retention. And I said, this is the stage you need to reach. So these were the levels. Now let's come to technique. This is something all of you know. Ramdev Baba taught all of you, right? Correct? Anyone who doesn't know? Okay. So let's talk about the technique. When you're doing Kapalabhati, it's basically a forceful single stroke exhalation. Forceful single stroke exhalation. It is not long exhalation. That's not this. It's a single stroke. Not, so you're not stretch. Just one stroke. Invariably, you'll find people doing, there is no use of shoulders in this. What you're doing is sitting erect, holding your chest firm, and just pushing your stomach in. Diaphragm goes up, breath goes out. Inhalation is passive, happens automatically. You don't go into it. You do not try to breathe in. It happens passively. It should happen passively. Do not try to breathe in. So it's not a two-way breathing. Only single stroke exhalation. Breathing will automatically happen. You don't need to worry about it. But pay attention that you're not using your shoulders or your head. You're not moving. Everything else remains firmly in place, just up, and you're only doing. Right? Your shoulder will feel a bit of vibration, but you're not using your shoulder. You're not taking it up. Okay. You can do it at 3 paces. You can do it slow. You can make the pace faster, and ultimately you can do it faster. So the maximum benefit is to do it fast enough. You can start with 15, 20, 30 counts, whatever you're comfortable with. Go up to 50. Do 3 rounds. Up to 50 and do 3 rounds. Ultimately, you can do 15, 15, 15 right now. You can do 20, 20, 20 later. Go slowly up. Go up to 50, 50, 53 rounds. So I'll just demonstrate, and then we can do it. So again, as I said, the same posture, etc. Chest is up and firm. The breathing is happening automatically, right? So we do 2 rounds of this, not 3. Whatever. Okay, right now let's keep it midway, so 30. Everyone does 30 rounds, right? So 30 rounds of Kapalabhati, straight back, gaze slightly up, chest firm, eyes closed. And first we take a deep breath in and start. Okay, majority of you are getting it. So more practice, the better. Okay, we do 1 round. You can do Kapalabhati in Ujjayi breath. This is normal breath. You can do Kapalabhati in Ujjayi breath, which is more powerful. And how do you do it in Ujjayi breath? Was that different? This is normal. The noise is coming from here, not from here. There's a bit of constriction here. And you'll notice that when you do normal breath, the breath hits you here. When you do it Ujjayi, it hits you here. It goes straight up. It's you here. I'll repeat. With mouth closed. Same noise, but with mouth closed. The noise will be more powerful. Same strokes in the same way, but with that bit of constriction. Okay, I'll demonstrate to you first, then you can repeat it. So the noise is different. It's coming because of the constriction coming from the throat, and the air is hitting you up straight. Not the air comes out through the nostril, but it's up there and then comes out. Passive breathing in. So the Kapalabhati technique is the same. Only you're doing it in a deep breath. Let's do it. So I'll watch what happens. How it is. Same thumb, posture, chest, back, gaze. Breathe in. Take a deep breath in, and start. Okay, about half of you have got it. Mahendra, you're using a mouth. Partly it's coming from the nose, partly it's coming from the mouth. Your mouth is going. So pay attention. Some of you, your shoulders are going. Some of you are still doing the normal breath. So practice it. When you practice a few times, you will get it. Trick is simple as a. You'll get it. The dog. It does it awesome. Correct. You close the mouth, and you will continue. Something like that, right? So learn the basic technique of Kapalabhati, then turn to Ujjayi. Okay. Ujjayi benefit is more. Let's go to the next one, please. Yes, again, Ramdev Baba has taught you enough. One nostril, two nostrils, correct? Okay. The basic technique is you're closing your one nostril, right first, breathing in from right, left, closing the left, breathing out from right, then breathing in from right, closing with the keeping the left closed, and then breathing out from left. So in, out, and you're alternating your nostrils. So that's basic technique all of you are aware of. Final point. Now you use this thumb and use this finger. These two fingers, there are various ways. You can keep it here to bring your focus here. You can fold it. It's up to you. Or you can keep it just like this. You can bring it here and keep it on your forehead, where your focus is supposed to be, just to make you more aware of it. These two fingers. You're using these two. This can fold or can remain straight, but you're using these two, ring finger and thumb. The breathing in here is extremely slow and quiet. If normally you do 10 counts, this can go up to 15 counts. Very slow and quiet. Even you will not hear any noise. Even you will not hear any noise. First we do in, out, in, out. Then we do in, retain, out, retain. And then you do in, retain, lock, release lock, exhale, hold. Same pranayama you can do in 3. Okay? All pranayams you can do in 3 levels. That's why I taught you the levels first. All 3 locks. I taught you levels first because you can apply those 3 levels to all the pranayams. You can apply to this also. So you first Mool Bandha, inhale from one nostril, hold, do your neck bandha, do your stomach bandha. Then as long as you can hold, then release both, all three, exhale from the other nostril. So the sequence remains the same, but bandhas you can apply in between. And here, since you have both your fingers, you can, while you're retaining, you can close both. So it's easier for you to retain. Otherwise, in the beginning, some air tends to escape. So since you have your fingers here, when applying the retention and bandhas, close your nostrils. When you close, automatically retention happens. So that is it. What is the time? Are we fast enough? Oh, okay. So we will not do practice here, but as I said, Anulom Vilom, but the trick here is it has to be very slow, steady, and quiet. No, there should be no noise. Even you should not be able to hear it. That's the trick in Anulom Vilom. Once you apply retention and bandha, this is called Nadi Shuddhi or Nadi Shodhan, because this purifies, unblocks your nerves. With the retention and the bandhas, it unblocks the channels, the nadis, the channels that you use for expanding the prana. These two always done in the beginning. Kapalabhati to empty your stomach and your lungs completely, and Nadi Shuddhi for unblocking your channels. And then do your others. I'm going to teach you only the classical basics. There are more sets of pranayama, but there'll be too much for you. Then the next one is Bhramari. I think this also you would have learned from television, right? Now here what you do is, this is a very effective pranayama for the mind, for stress particularly, or for your voice. Singers particularly, this is very, 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 very good. Singers. The trick here is you applying 4 fingers. This is only suggestive. Basically, you are closing your mind, closing your eyes, closing your nostrils, closing your mouth. Your 4 sense organs here. You're closing them. So it's only suggestive. You're not actually pressing them down, and you're not even blocking them. This is more important. With this you block your eardrums. These tiny things do not go in; they remain out. And you apply enough pressure, but not too much pressure. Enough pressure to close, but not too much pressure. So just to close, and while exhaling, you produce that humming sound. And the humming sound will create a vibration in your head, which is what you should enjoy. So the more you enjoy it, the better you're doing it. The pranayama. The idea is not to put too much pressure, but just block it completely. In both these pranayams, in Anulom Vilom, I forgot to tell you the position of the elbow. You will see people doing like this. You will see people doing like this. You will see people doing like this. The best thing is to do it like this, because as I said, all your other body parts should be relaxed. So in this, you are relaxed. Otherwise, in this, you are still holding it firm. And in some time, you will start feeling the pressure here because of the gravity. So this is the best. In this, of course, you need to hold it. So Bhramari, you generally know what Bhramari is. I don't know if you know the other two. Next one, please. Shitali. Do you know? No. Yeah. So what you do is you extend your tongue and roll it to a tube. Breathe in through that tube and breathe out normally through the nostril. Rest of the technique remains the same. Very cooling pranayama, both cooling for the body and cooling for the mind. So summertime, this is ideal. Summertime, this is ideal. This and the next one. Next one is Shitkari. Next one, please. Here, what you do is you clench your teeth lightly, don't press, and breathe in through the gaps in the teeth. There's some gap already there. You breathe in, so you make a sound like hissing, like a snake. So you breathe in through the gaps between the teeth, breathe out normally. You can retain, you can apply bandhas, all those applies. The same thing applies. This is called Shitkari. So Shitali and Shitkari both are very cooling for the body as well as mind. and particularly useful in this weather, summer weather. Ujjayi, the most important of the pranayams. Now, this is what you should practice maximum. The breath I taught you, the breath is with that bit of constriction. You do yogic breathing with Ujjayi breath. Yogic breathing with Ujjayi breath. The same retention, bandhas, timing, everything applies. But you do in the Ujjayi breath. This, the first effect it will have is, it will have a tranquilizing effect. Even you can solve your sleep problems with this. If you have a problem getting sleep, you can even solve this. Once you apply bandhas and retentions, then it is warming. On my trek in Himalayas, I have even sweat with this. In that icy cold weather, by doing Ujjayi, I have produced sweat. It can be that you know, apply bandhas for a longer time, but it is that heating. It can heat your system that much. It makes your body light. You're not going into all that. You are doing this with the same ratios, etc., that we talked about, same sequences. This is the initial stage of your advanced practices. Because advanced practices are all done in Ujjayi. So you need to practice Ujjayi. Once you practice Ujjayi, then you use different mudras to direct your breath or prana into different parts of your body. There are mudras that you use, and amazing. Just by changing the positions of your fingers and thumbs, you can direct your prana to different parts of your body, and you can actually feel it. Once you practice enough, you can feel it. You can direct it lower, you can direct it in the middle portion, higher, back, different areas. There are different mudras for this, which of course is another session of this session. So technique remains same, levels you can apply it at to each of the basic style of breathing remains the same. The retention and bandhas you can apply to all. Techniques to begin with for basics are the traditional ones. These are the traditional ones, which is Kapalabhati, Anulom Vilom, Bhramari, Shitali, Shitkari, and Ujjayi. There is Bhastrika, but Bhastrika is more advanced, so I would not teach you. It will require supervision. And there are other more advanced than that. For beginners, Ujjayi is where you should stop. You should not go beyond this. Ujjayi, the more you practice, the more your foundation for future practice will get done. So try and do all these every day if you find the time. Do not break them into two parts. Try and do them together. So don't decide that I'll do 3 in the morning and 3 in the evening. That's not a good idea. Do them all together. Doesn't matter if you're not able to do all. Do what you want to do, but form that habit of doing all of them together. I think that's the last slide. Yeah. So idea was to give you the basic concepts, the basic technique, basic method, basic way of breathing. If you are able to bring in your yogic breathing into your daily life, that itself is an achievement. If you are able to do all this, excellent. If you are not able to do, just bringing in that breathing technique, the yogic breathing technique of breathing into your daily life, itself is great. If you can reach up to Ujjayi, very good. If you can't, but don't give it up. Don't listen to me and then go home and forget about it. Do as much as you can. As I said, if you learned elsewhere, you learned and you think that's better, please feel free to practice that. If you think this is good, practice it. But do some pranayam every day. That's going to be my last appeal. Thank you. Yes, blood pressure patients should not do Ujjayi and should not do bandhas. If you have had a cardiac issue, if you have blood pressure, then do not do these. The yogic breathing you can definitely do all of these. No issue. Any other question?
Sir, Nandakumar here.
Nandakumar, there's one question here. I'll answer that, then I'll come to you.
Okay, right.
If you are able to bring it into your daily breathing, it will automatically change your breathing pattern, rhythm in the night. But after you have brought it into your conscious breathing, your daily breathing, then it will automatically change your breathing pattern in sleep, not in the beginning. Yeah, Nandakumar, you had a question.
Sir, इसमें ये yogic breathing.
Yeah.
You have given the ratio of the counts, timing.
Yeah.
इसमें while exhalation, वो ratio maintain नहीं होगा तो is it harmful?
It is not harmful. These are advised ratios, ideal ratios, so that you get optimum benefit out of it. But if you are not able to maintain those ratios, then what I would advise is reduce your inhalation time.
Reduce
your inhalation time.
Right.
So that you come closer to the ratio.
No, problem क्या होता है सर? Exhalation में fast हो जाता है तो retention नहीं होता बाद में.
The post exhalation retention नहीं होता है, correct? Correct. So it's a technique that you will learn with practice. It will come with practice.
But this is not harmful.
No, not harmful.
The ratio, if you are not able to maintain properly.
Initially, you start with your capacity. Ratio will build over a period.
Okay, right.
Ratio is your target.
Right. Thank you.
His question was that if I'm not able to maintain the ratio, is it harmful? It's not harmful at all. The target is the ratio, and that's when it becomes more fruitful. Any other question?
Hello. Hello.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, sure.
At what's the consequence or what are the sequence in which this pranayam should be done?
The sequence in which the pranayam should be done is the sequence that I presented.
Sorry?
The sequence is the same that I presented. That is Kapalabhati first, then Anulom Vilom, then Brahmari, and then Shitali Chitkari and Ujjayi if you want to do.
All right. Thank you.
Is that your question?
Yes.
Yeah. So that's the answer. Any other question?
Say something.
Hello? Questions are not from him. I don't know why you say.
Can I say something?
Yes.
Ji, namaskar.
Namaskar.
Swatantra.
Yes, sir. How are you?
Fine.
Incidentally, the trigger for today's presentation was Sapir Kumar. He did a session. He covered a lot on the oxygen. I have not even touched oxygen because he has covered a lot on the oxygen. So if you want to learn the importance of oxygen, please see his PPT or attend one of his sessions. Yes, Swatantra.
Yes, Swatantra,
over to you.
What
I want to share with the participants that in 2008, lucky enough to learn pranayam from Guru, his Vikram farmhouse. And though I'm always a person doing a lot of exercise and all that, but after teaching is not in version. I had 3 sessions with him, and every time I go to meet him, I learn something new. My health becomes good. At the age of 64, I am much healthier and better than I was at 4. I go, Guruji, not taught me pranayama, but he was the first person to continue deep in 2000. And my salute to him, and God bless him for teaching this pranayam, and so healthy and happy. Thank you, Guruji.
I am happy that you benefited from whatever you learned. One correction: Guru word is for the one who takes you towards realization. For anything else that is taught, the word is acharya, not guru. A teacher, not a guru. So you can use the word teacher or acharya if you want to use Sanskrit, but not guru.
मैं भाषा में हम टीचर को गुरु ही कहते हैं.
Fine. So if you need, hello. Okay. If you do need to ask any more questions, you know my email ID. Don't send a mail on the Groval ID. Send me my personal ID, which is vinod.karetwal@gmail.com. You have my mobile number, so you can send me a message. I'll answer. It's 98205-3770. Most of you should have it. If you don't have it, you can move on. Thank you.